There are moments in life when it feels as if something invisible has silently rearranged the furniture of your soul. Nothing dramatic happens on the outside. You still wake up to your alarm, brush your teeth, open the same apps, answer the same messages. And yet, somewhere just beneath the surface, a soft and undeniable shift has occurred. A certain hunger that used to gnaw at you has quieted. A longing you once carried like a small, persistent ache is now wrapped in a strange, luminous stillness. You can't explain why, but you know, something in you has already begun to change, and it has done so without asking your permission. In Jungian language, we would say that the unconscious has moved. The unconscious, for Jung, is not merely a dark basement full of forgotten memories. It is an active, living intelligence that organizes our inner life and subtly steers our outer fate. When this deeper layer begins to reorient itself, it often announces its movement through what Jung called synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that link inner states with outer events. You find a phrase in a book that perfectly mirrors your current struggle. You hear a song lyric that answers a question you never voiced. You stumble upon a message like this at the exact moment you were ready to hear it. These are not proof in any scientific sense, yet they feel more precise than logic. They are the psyche's way of saying, pay attention, the story is shifting. For a long time, perhaps, you lived inside a carefully constructed persona. The persona, in Jung's terms, is the social mask we create to function in the world. The competent one, the accommodating one, the endlessly strong one who needs nothing and no one. It isn't false, exactly. It is simply incomplete. It contains everything that earns approval and leaves in the shadows everything that feels inconvenient, too much, too needy, too intense. You may have worn this mask so long that you forgot it was a mask at all. You called it just who I am. You pursued connection from that place, trying to find love while half of your truth was standing outside the door. Then, without warning, hairline fractures began to appear in that polished surface. The late-night anxiety after a conversation that looked fine on paper. The growing disinterest in people who only meet you on the surface. The sudden aversion to certain patterns that used to feel exciting. The emotional roller coasters, the intense but empty bonds, the constant need to prove your worth. You caught yourself deleting a dating app with a kind of quiet relief. You chose to stay home alone and noticed, with a hint of surprise, that you did not feel lonely. It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't resignation. It was as if your inner life had turned down the volume on the old drama and tuned itself to a different frequency. This is the beginning of an initiation, though it rarely announces itself with that kind of grandeur. From a Jungian perspective, what is stirring is the self, the central organizing principle of the psyche, the deeper totality of who you are beyond your conscious ego. When the self becomes more active, it begins to pull you away from what is inauthentic and outgrown, even if your conscious mind still clings to those old structures for safety. You might experience this as confusion at first. Why do the people who once fascinated you now leave you cold? Why does the pursuit that once consumed you now feel strangely flat? The answer is not that you've become numb. It is that your psyche has grown more discerning. In that growing discernment, a threshold appears. You are neither who you once were, nor yet who you are becoming. Outwardly, little may have changed, but inwardly, you have stepped into a liminal space, a psychological twilight between old patterns and a new, unnamed life. You feel less driven to chase love and more drawn to understand yourself. You notice the quiet satisfaction of an evening spent with your own thoughts, your own work, your own rituals. The world may interpret this as withdrawal. Depth psychology would call it preparation. The libido, Jung's word for psychic energy, for eros as life force, is slowly being reclaimed from compulsive seeking and redirected inward toward the center of your being, where a different kind of meeting is being prepared. There comes a moment in every inner transformation when the familiar landscape begins to dissolve, not through force, but through a gentle erosion from within. What once captivated you now appears strangely distant, like a scene from a life you can barely remember living. You look at old attractions, old patterns, old choices, and something in you whispers, "That was never truly mine." This is not judgment, it is recognition, the dawning awareness that much of what you once called love was, in truth, a repetition of unconscious wounds seeking resolution. In Jungian terms, this stage marks the loosening of a complex. A complex is an emotional knot formed around early experiences, particularly those connected to family dynamics, that continues to influence our adult relationships without our conscious awareness. Many people are drawn to partners who echo the emotional atmosphere of their childhood, not because it is nourishing, but because it is familiar. The psyche gravitates toward what it knows, even when what it knows is painful. For years, you may have mistaken that familiarity for destiny, calling it chemistry or fate. Only now, with new clarity, do you see that you are reenacting something ancient, hoping each time to change the ending. When a complex dissolves, it does so quietly. One day you realize you are no longer magnetized by the volatility you once equated with passion. The intensity that once thrilled you now feels exhausting. The behaviors you once tolerated without question now strike you as intolerable. It is as if your inner world has updated its blueprint of what is desirable, and only your conscious mind is just catching up. This shift is not arbitrary. It signals that your unconscious has withdrawn its energy from the old pattern, and without that energy, the pattern collapses. In this phase, your perception sharpens in ways that may surprise you. You find yourself seeing through people more clearly than before, not with cynicism, but with a kind of sober intuition. You can sense when someone is performing rather than revealing, hiding rather than living. Jung spoke of the self as an inner authority that perceives reality without the distortions of fear or longing. When the self awakens, your intuition becomes an instrument of truth. You no longer need to analyze mixed signals or decipher ambiguous intentions. You can feel what is genuine and what is hollow in a matter of seconds. This is not magic, it is maturity, the capacity to perceive without projecting. During this time, dreams often become more vivid. You may encounter images that feel charged with meaning, a locked door suddenly opening, a shadowy figure appearing with a message you don't yet understand, an unfamiliar house that seems somehow your own. Jung believed dreams are the language of the unconscious, a symbolic dialogue between ego and self. When transformation is underway, the dream life intensifies because the psyche is trying to communicate more directly. Even waking déjà vu, that uncanny sense of "I have been here before," can indicate that deeper layers of your psyche are aligning with outer events, preparing you for a meeting or moment not yet visible to your waking mind. In your daily life, subtle impulses begin guiding you. You avoid certain people without knowing why, only later realizing they weren't aligned with your growth. You feel called to new places, new routines, new circles of connection. At times, these changes may feel random or whimsical, but beneath them lies a profound intelligence. Jung described this as the teleological nature of the psyche, its innate orientation toward wholeness. Your unconscious is not sabotaging you, it is steering you. Every deviation, every dissolution, every unexpected pull is part of a larger choreography designed to bring you into deeper alignment with your true self. And so you find yourself standing in a kind of liminal vestibule, no longer ensnared by the old patterns, not yet anchored in the new. The world may not understand this phase, but the psyche recognizes it as sacred. It is the preparation before descent, the gathering of light before you enter the underworld of your own shadow. You may feel an emerging steadiness, a kind of quiet authority rising in you. It is the first hint that the journey inward is not a collapse, but a return to the forgotten, the repressed, the unlived parts of your own being now ready to be seen. There is a threshold in every meaningful transformation where the descent becomes inevitable. The outer world grows quieter, not because life has withdrawn, but because your attention has turned inward. You begin to hear subtler voices, old memories rising with new resonance, intuitive warnings that feel like whispers from beneath the floorboards of your consciousness, impulses that guide you into unfamiliar emotional terrain. This is the moment when the psyche invites you into the underworld, that deep interior where ancient patterns reside, waiting not to punish you, but to be integrated. Jung understood this as the confrontation with the shadow, the encounter with everything you have exiled from your conscious identity. Not just your wounds, but your forbidden strengths. Not just your fear, but your power. Not just your sorrow, but your unclaimed desire. The shadow is often misunderstood as merely the dark side of the personality. In Jungian psychology, the shadow contains all the qualities that do not fit the polished narrative of the persona. For a woman who learned early to be accommodating, the shadow may hold her anger. For one taught to be selfless, the shadow may contain her ambition. For one condition to be pleasing, the shadow may store her erotic intensity, her hunger for truth, her need for sovereignty. When the shadow emerges, it does not do so gently. It comes with heat, rising irritability, unexpected grief, a sharpened intuition that cuts through illusions. This heat is the psyche's way of melting the frozen places where your life force was once trapped. You may find yourself revisiting memories that you thought were long resolved. A conversation from years ago suddenly reappears with new clarity. An old betrayal echoes louder than before. Or you recall moments from childhood, small, seemingly insignificant interactions that now reveal themselves as formative patterns. This is not regression, it is retrieval. The psyche is returning to the earliest places where the story of your relational life was written. Jung called this the return of the repressed, not as pathology, but as the beginning of healing. What returns is what seeks freedom. Often, at the core of this descent lies the father complex. Not necessarily the literal father, but the inner imprint of the masculine. In Jungian thought, the father complex shapes how a woman perceives authority, protection, validation, and the right to take up space. If love from the masculine was inconsistent, controlling, absent, or conditional, the psyche may internalize a belief that one must earn worthiness, impress for affection, or shrink to avoid disapproval. Such early imprints can create unconscious longing for emotionally unavailable partners, mistaking their distance for depth, their inconsistency for intensity. When the father complex dissolves, something revolutionary occurs. The woman no longer seeks masculine validation as the axis of her identity. She does not harden against men, rather she softens into herself. She becomes her own inner authority. This release can feel seismic. What once felt captivating now appears as a repetition of a childhood wound. What once felt like destiny now feels like déjà vu, a story you have already lived and no longer need to reenact. The psyche is rewriting its contract with love, not with any particular person, but with the archetypal masculine, the part of the psyche that governs direction, protection, decision, discipline. When this archetype becomes internalized, you stop chasing what is outside because you have found within what was missing. This is not self-sufficiency as isolation, it is sovereignty as groundedness. As you move through this descent, dreams often become darker, more symbolic. You may dream of caves, oceans, ruins, staircases descending into dim places. These images are not warnings, they are invitations. They are the language of the collective unconscious, the vast reservoir of symbols and archetypes shared across humanity. When the individual psyche is in transformation, it begins to speak in the imagery of myth, because myth is how the deepest truths reveal themselves. You are no longer merely processing personal history. You are encountering the universal patterns that shape all human becoming. In waking life, the descent may feel like a stripping away. You lose interest in superficial interactions. Relationships that once sustained you now feel hollow. Old identities fall like leaves from a tree that has outgrown its own branches. There can be loneliness here, a sense of disorientation, but beneath that loneliness is a luminous awareness. Something in you refuses to return to the old life. Something in you knows the way forward even as your conscious mind struggles to articulate it. This is the self guiding you, the deepest center of your being, drawing you toward wholeness. The descent is not punishment. It is initiation. It is the psyche pulling you into the depths so that you may reclaim what you abandoned long ago. And when you emerge, for emerge you will carry with you the parts of your soul that were once scattered. You will rise not as a fragmented self seeking completion, but as a unified self capable of true connection. There comes a point in every descent when the darkness begins to take on a new texture. What once felt like disorientation becomes a kind of deep interior silence. You are no longer falling, you are listening. The underworld of the psyche is not chaos, it is a realm of forgotten order, of truths buried beneath years of adaptation. As you settle into this space, you begin to sense that you are not alone in your depths. There are presences here, faint, ancestral, symbolic. Jung would call them archetypes, the primordial patterns of the collective unconscious that shape our myths, our dreams, and the very structure of our becoming. One of the first archetypal figures to emerge in this phase is the feminine lineage. You may feel echoes of women who came before you, your mother, grandmother, great-grandmothers, and the unnamed women whose stories live in your blood. Not as literal memories, but as emotional textures, the silence they were forced into, the desires they suppressed, the resilience they cultivated in the absence of choice. Transgenerational patterns rise here. Jung believed that unresolved psychic material does not vanish. It travels through the generations until someone is ready to bear witness to it. As you move deeper into yourself, you become that witness. Perhaps you notice qualities in yourself that you once judged or rejected. Your fierceness, your ambition, your longing for profound intimacy, your refusal to settle. These are not defects. They are the ancestral flame burning through you, asking to be named. The women before you may not have been allowed to claim their fullness, but you can. As you encounter these inherited layers, you begin to understand that the work you do in your psyche is not yours alone. You are healing a lineage. You are breaking a pattern, not by force, but by presence. In this interior territory, you also meet the animus, the inner masculine figure that shapes your relationship to thought, will, and eros. In its undeveloped form, the animus can be critical, domineering, irrationally demanding. But when integrated, it becomes a source of clarity, confidence, direction, and creative fire. Many women project this archetype onto the men they seek, believing that only through an external partner can they access these qualities. Yet in the underworld, projection dissolves. You begin to sense that the strength you once sought outside has always lived within you, waiting for recognition. This realization is often accompanied by a surge of eros, not erotic desire alone, but the broader life force that animates creativity, purpose, and connection. Jung insisted that eros is the connective principle of the psyche, the energy that draws us toward meaningful relationships and meaningful work. When eros rises, it feels like a warm current beneath the ribs, a quickening, a sudden clarity about what you can no longer deny yourself. You may feel drawn to new forms of self-expression, new studies, new callings. The very energy that once fueled your longing for romantic union is now being reclaimed as fuel for your individuation. And paradoxically, this reclamation is what prepares you for love in its truest form. Slowly, as this inner architecture reorganizes itself, you begin to notice changes in your outer world. People drift away without conflict, as though the threads that once bound you have quietly loosened. New individuals appear who speak a different language, one that resonates with your emerging identity. You might find yourself guided to unfamiliar environments, a class you had no intention of taking, a friend of a friend gathering, a quiet spot in a cafe where a significant conversation will one day unfold. This is synchronicity at work again, the unconscious shaping circumstance to mirror your internal evolution. As you ascend from the depths, you find your sense of self shifting. You are less concerned with being understood and more anchored in understanding yourself. Old insecurities no longer have the same grip because the foundation from which they fed has dissolved. There is a widening stillness within you, a space where reactions once lived. You listen more than you explain. You choose more than you chase. You respond more than you react. This is the emergence of sovereignty, the quiet authority that forms when the ego aligns with the self. Yet sovereignty is not isolation. It is spaciousness. You begin to speak less from a need for validation and more from a place of truth. You allow others to hold their projections without rushing to correct them. You no longer enter relationships to escape yourself, but to deepen into yourself. This shift is not loud. It has the quiet inevitability of a tide turning. And somewhere in this widening, softening space, a new kind of loneliness may appear. Not the loneliness of lack, but the loneliness of altitude, the solitude experienced by someone who has begun to see the world from a different height. You are not above anyone, you are simply no longer willing to live below your own depth. It can feel briefly like standing on a ridge between worlds. But this too is part of the initiation. For only from such heights can you recognize the ones who are capable of meeting you there. As your psyche rises from the underworld with new clarity, something subtle yet profound begins to change in the rhythm of your daily life. You no longer approach relationships with the unconscious hope that someone will rescue you from yourself, nor do you walk through the world armored, bracing for disappointment. Instead, you inhabit a space of quiet readiness, a readiness not born of longing, but of alignment. Jung called this stage the emergence of the self into consciousness, a moment when the ego ceases its frantic search for external validation and begins to move in harmony with a deeper, wiser center. This inner alignment creates an unmistakable shift in your emotional atmosphere. You no longer confuse intensity with intimacy. You recognize the difference between chemistry and compatibility, between connection and projection, between the thrill of longing and the peace of recognition. You begin to understand that many of your past relationships were not failures, but mirrors, each one reflecting a part of your psyche you needed to confront. Where once you sought partnership to complete you, now you seek partnership that expands you. This shift is the hallmark of individuation, the path toward becoming a whole individual rather than a fragment seeking to be filled. In this new psychic landscape, authenticity becomes non-negotiable. You find yourself unable to maintain old masks. The persona, once necessary for navigating social expectations, now feels thin, like clothing that no longer fits. You may speak more honestly, even when your voice trembles. You set boundaries not as acts of defiance, but as expressions of self-respect. You reveal your needs without shame. Vulnerability becomes a form of truth-telling, not an admission of weakness. In Jungian terms, this is the integration of shadow material into conscious identity. That which was once hidden becomes part of your wholeness. As authenticity rises, false connections naturally fall away. People who thrived on your compliance or your emotional labor may drift from your life. Relationships built on unspoken agreements of mutual avoidance begin to dissolve. You might feel both relief and grief in this process, for no shedding is without sensation. Yet beneath the grief is a deeper knowing. You are no longer willing to betray yourself in order to be loved. The psyche refuses to return to a smaller shape once it has tasted expansion. And so, a new magnetism begins to form around you, not the magnetism of performance or pursuit, but the magnetic field generated by coherence. When your inner world aligns, your outer world reflects that alignment. Without effort, without strategy, without manipulation, you begin to draw into your orbit individuals who resonate with your evolution. These are people who value depth, who meet life with curiosity, who hold themselves accountable for their inner work. They are not intimidated by your truth, nor are they threatened by your independence. Instead, they recognize you. Not the persona, you. The living center beneath it. Within this fertile field of authenticity, grace enters. Grace, in Jungian language, manifests as synchronicity, those uncanny moments when inner readiness meets outer opportunity. You start noticing patterns, a chance meeting, a repeated symbol, a dream that echoes a daytime event. These synchronicities are not random. They are the psyche's way of signaling that you are approaching an encounter of significance. They are breadcrumbs on the path, guiding you toward the next threshold of your journey. Then comes a moment, sometimes gradual, sometimes instantaneous, when the stillness inside you shifts. It is not the restless longing of before. It is a sense of presence, as though something or someone is moving toward you on an unseen horizon. You feel it not in the mind, but in the body, a soft expansion around the heart, a groundedness in the belly, a subtle attunement to life. Jung called this phenomenon the constellating archetype, when the psyche prepares itself for a meaningful encounter long before the ego understands what is unfolding. You begin to realize that love is not something you chase. It is something you meet when you and the moment are ready for each other. When the meeting happens, and it will not resemble the anxious highs or dramatic lows of your past. There will be no guessing games, no deciphering of mixed signals, no contorting yourself to be chosen. Instead, the connection will feel like recognition, as though your souls had been speaking long before your bodies arrived in the same room. You will sense a resonance that is immediate yet not overwhelming, deep yet steady, familiar yet new. This is the quality of relationships that emerge from individuation. They are not born of deficit but of fullness, not of projection but of perception. With such a meeting, fear begins to loosen. Not because you are guaranteed a happy ending, but because you have finally developed the inner capacity to navigate love without abandoning yourself. You understand that real intimacy requires courage, not performance. You understand that commitment is an act of presence, not possession. You understand that the right person will not demand that you shrink to fit their world, but will meet you at the threshold of your own. This is the union Jung referred to when he spoke of the conjunctio oppositorum, the sacred merging of opposites. It is not a merging that erases individuality, but one that enhances it. Two sovereign psyches choosing to walk together, not to complete each other, but to expand each other. Such love is neither fantasy nor fairy tale. It is a spiritual practice, a psychological devotion, a willingness to grow in the presence of another who is also growing. It is eros made conscious. And through this unfolding, you come into profound contact with the self, not as an abstract concept, but as the living center of your being. The self becomes your inner compass, your quiet authority, your source of meaning. You discover that you are not waiting for love to save you. You are preparing to meet love as an equal. Because the deepest truth of transformation is this: what is meant for you will recognize you only when you finally recognize yourself. If you wish to continue exploring these depths, the psyche, the archetypes, the mysteries of feminine consciousness, and the path of individuation, you are invited to like, share, subscribe, and join this ongoing journey. Share your reflections in the comments. Your story may be the exact revelation someone else is searching for.